The Steeler way.
And there's a reason why we call this podcast the Steeler Culture Podcast, because
it's not just a quote that Troy said in his Hall of Fame speech. It's legit. It's something that should be taken seriously. It's something that everyone and anyone that puts on the black and gold should embody.
It is what has built this team to great success, to 6 Lombardis, to 8 Super Bowl appearances.
And a reputation that should always be lived up to.
To intimidation that many teams and players felt for years, even some of the greatest of all time.
Tom Brady said himself in his own documentary, when he first played the Steelers in the playoff game, he was terrified. He was terrified to play the Steelers.
That is the reputation that this team once held, and that is because of the culture that was passed down from team to team to team, to coach to coach to coach. It's been passed down through legends, Hall of Famers, that have thankfully hoisted up Lombardis for this team, for this city. And unfortunately, that's dead. And I hate saying it, but it's gone. And it's a dying breed. And it all started when this man, Dan Rooney, passed away. May he rest in peace. It all started when he passed away. And there's been no one to pass it down ever since.
Some have tried. Some continue to try.
And why is this a topic of discussion? Because there are players, current and past.
For how many years straight is this? Like 4 or 5 years straight?
Years. There have been many players in the past that have spoken out about this. Guys like Ryan Clark and Rocky Blyer. And there have been so many others. Chris Hoke, I think, was one of them.
Alan Faneca said a statement on social media.
Brian McFadden. There's been so many. Brent Kiesel. There's been so many great Steelers that have spoken out for years about the lack of respect and the lack of culture that we have in the Steelers locker room.
Today.
The lack of the Steeler way. They've said it for years, and the more years that pass and the more it's said, the worse it looks. And it's truly a reflection not only on the players and their standpoint and their view and their priorities, but absolutely a reflection on coaching.
Mm-hmm.
This has been said for many years by many legends, by many players, past and current. But most recently, from Minkah Fitzpatrick and Ben Roethlisberger himself on his podcast.
Yeah.
And this is what Minkah specifically had to say.
In order to see fruit, you got to toil for it. I think too many people don't want to toil for it. They just want to walk out here and think that they're going to make plays and think that they're going to perform at a high level. I think we need to have more people that want to work for it and not expect it to be handed to them, because this is the NFL. Nothing's handed to you. You got to earn everything. And I think that, dudes just think that because they're wearing the black and gold that they're going to win games. And I think we need to check their mentality and make people realize that they got to earn that mentality, and they got to earn every single blade of grass, and every single splash play, and every single rep that they get out there. They got to earn it.
That's Minkah Fitzpatrick on his stance in the locker room and how certain players, certain teammates.
And this was after the Patriots lost Thursday night.
Yeah, that is his stance on the locker room and how just players have their own set of priorities and how they play on the field. And he pretty much stated, man, just because they wear the black and gold, they think they're going to get their plays, they're going to get their wins, they're going to get theirs, right?
Yeah, they simply put on the uniform. They put on the logo like they're Tim Allen in the Santa Claus. Oh, look at me now, I'm Santa Claus. I put on the cloak, I put on the jacket, I'm Santa Claus now.
But like Scott Calvin in the movie, he was in denial, and so are the players that Minkah is talking about. He didn't throw any specific names out there, but I think we know specific players that have that sense of feeling in the locker room, unfortunately. And Minkah's not the only guy in the locker room, current locker room, that has said that. Arthur Millette said something similar last year.
Yeah.
When we were getting blown out and there were players on the sideline giggling up, laughing, smiling and cheering.
Yep.
Who was doing that just a couple games ago versus the Cardinals when he scored a touchdown?
A certain number 1 wide receiver who's being paid $16 million, and his number is number 18. His name is Deontay Johnson. Oh, look what I did. Look what I caught. I caught something I never get. Yet all you got to do is look at the play clock.
And we wonder, and there are people out there that wonder why we think it's why we're making a big deal out of it. It's just, again, it's a reflection on their priorities, and it shows you what they truly care about. And it shows the lack of culture and the lack of leadership, and it's a reflection on coaching. It really is. It really is.
Now, because Ryan Clark, he was on the Pat McAfee show just yesterday, and he talked about the steal away. And he stated on the Pat McAfee show that 0 people care about the steal away. 0 people.
Again, this is a reputation. This is a culture that is passed down through generations, through players. Troy said it in his speech himself. If I can get the fucking speech up here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get the actual
There
quote.
it is. There it is.
He said, oh my God. He said this. To be a Steeler is to consider others before considering yourself, to protect your brother even from himself, to give support at your own expense, and when wearing the black and gold suit of armor, make sure no one desecrates it, disrespects it, and more importantly, we ourselves don't dishonor. And that's all these players have been doing for years now.
And not only are we, or the players, are dishonoring it, they are letting other teams and players desecrate it. Who remembers when Andrew Wingard, after the Jags game, took a terrible towel from the stands and started waving it in our own stadium? Who remembers?
Instead of talking about that in the post game, they'd rather blame the refs for the loss. Remember that?
And who remembers the Browns game when a Browns depth chart player, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's nobody really relevant, but he went up to a Steelers fan in the Browns stadium, took the terrible towel, started twirling it, and then as he walked back to the locker room, started wiping his ass with it.
There were
Something
there were players that did that in the past, such as TJ Husmanzada and Keith Bullock, and look what happened to them.
Jeremy Hill,
and look what happened to them.
Yet our players today are they're not even talking about it. They're just letting it slide.
They don't respect it, and there's no one in the locker room to pass down that knowledge and that culture. Troy said he said at the beginning of his speech, this is the exact quote, he said, "These virtues I learned while playing for the Steelers are what make the legacy of the black and gold timeless. They're passed down the locker room from the steel curtain to anyone who violently wears the black and gold." Or valiantly wears the black and gold.
Yeah.
We don't have that no more. Even Ben said it on his podcast. I want to give a shout to Steel You on social media, on TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram. You guys have probably seen it. Many of his clips, many of his shorts, many of his TikToks. Shout to him.
Big time.
So he put this together in regards to the Steeler way. This is very, very enticing, man. He put up clips of many different players. And this is from not just this year, not just recently, but many years in the past.
Maybe the tradition of the Pittsburgh Steelers is done.
One thing is talent can win a championship, but culture is what builds dynasties. The Steelers have gone away from a little bit.
I think that, dudes just think that because they're wearing the black and gold that they're going to win games.
You need someone to stand up in that room on offense and be like, hey, this isn't what it means to wear the black and gold.
One more. I'm just tired of stuff.
And weed out the garbage, man. Don't let garbage infiltrate your team.
In order to see fruit, you got to toil for it. I think too many people don't want to toil for it. They just want to walk out here and think that they're going to make plays.
But I just feel like people aren't afraid to play the Pittsburgh Steelers anymore.
Isn't that fucking true? No one is afraid to play us no more.
No.
We don't have that intimidation factor like we used to.
No, that's why other teams are just going into our own stadium,
and we're
going to our own fan base and just taking their shit and just making a mockery of it.
And we're very aware that those days are done. It's literally a dying breed. And when we say dying breed, it means there are very few players that reflect that now.
Yeah, because
it's Minkah, it's TJ, it's Cam.
Yeah, Ryan Clark said...
That's it. Who else can you add there?
Ryan Clark said, when I say 0, I don't necessarily mean it literally. Guys like Minkah, Watt, and Hayward, they represent that. But outside of that, in the locker room, in the meetings, nobody else represents it.
No.
He pretty much stated that there are people in that locker room that think just wearing those colors entitles you to wins, and it doesn't. You can't will wins in the league. And when a guy comes out after only 2 losses that says... people need to approach it differently. They need to work differently. That's because he's seen things around that locker room, around that practice field, in those meeting rooms that doesn't lead him to believe everybody's putting their hand in the pile the same way.
And that was said by Pat McAfee, you said?
Ryan Clark on the Pat McAfee show yesterday.
Ryan Clark, who literally lived in the prime of that fucking culture, knows what he's talking about. He lined up right beside one of the greatest safeties of all time, who time after time after time, and even seen it in the podcast intro for his Hall of Fame speech. You've seen it in the Steeler U clip. He's constantly saying that dynasties are what win you championships.
Yeah. Why do you think the 70s team was as legit as they were?
Yeah.
Because of the culture that they had, that Chuck Noll put in there, and input into the minds of the talent that he brought in.
And what we mean is that was passed down to Cowher, who was already a Pittsburgh native, so he understood it probably better than many people would think. Cowher understood it. The players that he had inherited, his knowledge of the team, his respect for the team, his respect for the ownership, and the intimidation factor that Cowher brought to the team.
Yeah.
They respected him. They respected the team. They respected the ownership. They respected the history, and they played like it. And that continued down past Cowher with Ben through the early Tomlin era. And it seems like Ben was the last remaining guy that led that pack
and
of
that's
the Steelers' way. And I will say this, it's Ben was the last leader on the offense, obviously.
Yeah.
And he himself, I will say, didn't do a proper job of passing it down to certain individual talent, but he definitely tried. He did it with Pat. He did it with Najee. Najee's frustrated himself. Najee's one of the few offensive players, and I would even say leaders, if you want to pick a leader on the offense, maybe Najee. Yeah. He's one of the few that truly understand and respect and represent that way, that Steeler way. And Ben passed that down to guys like him, and I'll even throw Muth in there because he loved Muth.
Yeah.
He tried that with Deontay. Deontay couldn't give a shit.
No. And I think that's very, very evident when you see Deontay out there.
Yes.
Especially with how Deontay's been, not really giving his best on the Warren fumble, just walking out there, not doing anything, not giving his best effort. The touchdown that he got against Arizona, just celebrating, dancing, because he got a freaking touchdown.
Yep.
And Ryan Clark talked about that too, because, if people are acting that way, because of the 4th and 2 play that Mitch threw.
Right.
He threw it deep to Deontay. Deontay was 1-on-1. He gave Deontay that shot. He overthrew him, obviously. But Ryan Clark pointed out that if a player like that, like how Deontay's been acting, if he's acting out that way, why are you giving him that opportunity when he hasn't earned that opportunity? When he hasn't lived up to that number one role and how he's been acting?
He hasn't.
Why give him this shot? Essentially what you're doing right there is you're giving that guy the opportunity no matter how he's acting.
That's what Ryan Clark said?
That's essentially what he stated, yeah.
That's fair. That's a fair argument, actually.
It's hard to disagree with it.
Especially when you consider George Pickens is the better 50-50 guy, but...
Yeah, we're talking about a 6'2", 6'3", 210-pound individual that is miraculous at 50-50 balls compared to a Deontay Johnson who's smaller, who doesn't really have that same dynamic. He's a different receiver compared to George Pickens.
The game on the line,
But you mentioned about Ben being, the last breed of implementing the Steeler tradition and the Steeler way, the Steeler mentality. He talked about that on his podcast with Spence. And I got the quote right here.
Yeah, listen to this.
Ben stated, "When I left, I was kind of the last guard there. Pouncey left the year before. I was the last one there. There was such an age gap for me and everyone else on offense. There just wasn't that Steeler tradition passed down. You have it on defense. Don't get me wrong," which he's not wrong there.
Yeah, only 3 people.
But
maybe 4. Maybe 4.
But you don't have it on offense. You're not seeing, in my opinion, the toughness on offense. Ben continued.
He's not wrong.
Ben continued and he said, "You need someone to stand up in that room on offense and say, this isn't what it means to wear the black and gold, like you heard in the Steeler U short. This isn't what has been handed down from those teams in the 70s. The Steel Curtain, the 4 Super Bowls, the Knowles, the Bradshaws, the Blunts. And Ben even continued to talk about team traditions. And one of the traditions he talked about was being an advocate of keeping music out the locker room. This is what Ben stated. Listen to this.
I'm sorry, all I can think of is Claypool.
Yeah, but listen to this.
Loser.
Ben stated, when I got there, there was no music in the locker room. You didn't blast music in the locker room because I don't know why you just didn't. I was a big stickler on that when I was in there. So when I walked in, people were like, oh, guys, Ben is in here. You better shut that music off. The reason it meant so much to me.
I wish we had that. Oh my God.
The reason.
If only Tomlin.
Now listen. To finish off, the reason it meant so much to me was because when Dan Rooney would walk in that locker room, he didn't want it on. He might come to your locker and talk to you. That's what Ben stated about the Steal Away, about the tradition of the Steelers, considering pretty much he's stating that it's no longer there. The tradition is no longer there.
It's not. And what he means, and the reason we keep bringing up the Steel Curtain dynasty and the 4 Super Bowls and Bradshaws and Knowles and Blunts and guys like that is because that was our reputation. We had a massive, successful. I know, I'm getting to that.
Yeah.
We had a great, successful, intimidating reputation for years, right? That is no longer reputation. That is now history. That's in the past. That is dead. That is gone.
Yeah.
That has not been passed down for many years now. Ben was the last line of defense for that, and he tried with certain guys. And he's right. There was an age gap. And as we grow farther into this shithole we call Earth, people get dumber. People's priorities are not in the proper order, and they just don't have respect for shit no more.
No.
It's as simple as that. That's just how we have advanced as a society, as humanity. And unfortunately, it's shitty. It is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also a reflection on coaching, how that reputation and that, culture is not passed down, because that's where it all starts. If they don't respect you, if they don't fear you, they're going to do whatever the fuck they want, which is why things like music is played in the locker room.
Yeah.
Which is why people say that Tomlin is the best friend rather than a head coach. Because once they view you as a friend, as a best friend, or whatever, they don't respect you.
Yeah.
Now, Tomlin is very well respected around the league, but he doesn't bring that intimidation factor in the locker room. Not like a Knoll, not like a Bill Cowher. Who I think was Bradshaw. Bradshaw said himself, we feared Chuck Knoll, which is why we played great for him.
Yeah.
Same thing with Cowher. Cowher is one of the most intimidating coaches in NFL history. It's hard to see why he is. It's hard to see why that is, rather.
Mm-hmm.
It's not hard to see why that is.
Yeah, it's not hard to see.
But
yeah,
with Mike Tomlin, that's I feel like that's died in the locker room, especially after Ben left.
No, because I remember after the Cardinals game, I read something online that apparently Cardinals, I don't know if this is true. It's just something I read, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's true. Cardinals players after the win last Sunday, Cardinals players were in the locker room saying, you got rid of Matt Canada, but y'all still suck. And they were like laughing and everything. That's what the Steelers have become because of the way that they've played, the way that they've acted, the way that they just constantly shit on the tradition and the Steeler way. We're a laughingstock.
Yeah.
We are a laughingstock. We're a big meme now in the NFL. It didn't used to be that way.
And I hate that these former players continue to come out and say these things about the Steeler culture and the Steeler way and the Steeler locker room. And this has been years now. This is just another year that's reflecting on what we used to be.
Yeah.
On what is now history and no longer reputation. It's fucking shameful, man. And the more years that this continues to be brought up and said, the worse it looks. And it all stems from coaching. I do believe that. It absolutely stems from coaching.
Yeah.
We had such a prime view of the culture and the Steeler way when in Tomlin's early years, which was passed to Tomlin. Let's be honest. Let's be really honest. It was passed to Tomlin. And then when all these legends and all these guys started to fade out, they started to age and they started to retire, and we're starting to see some of them in gold jackets now in Canton, right? It just got worse and worse and worse. More drama stemmed in the locker room. There was less leadership, less respect. And now it's a continued trend.
Yeah.
You notice that?
A big continued trend.
It's a continued
You're right.
trend. That's how I view it. Is the more we see this, the more we hear it year after year. It's very discouraging. And I haven't found myself this disengaged as a Steelers fan in a long time. Probably ever, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
I haven't been this disengaged, which is why we say change is necessary. That's exactly why we say change is necessary.
Yeah.
It's been too long with Tomlin, too many years. He has very much underwhelmed with so much, with such greatness. And it's stale. It's very stale, and it's reflecting on the locker room now. It's reflecting on the locker room and the way they play and the way they act, their priorities.
Yeah.
And just truthfully, like their I don't want to say drive, but more of their motivation. You notice like there's not many people in the locker room that just don't have any motivation to play to a great level anymore. You notice that.
It definitely comes off that way on the field. A lot of these players, like, especially when it should matter the most right now, the 4 games remaining we got, playoff implications, where we lie right now in the playoffs or the 6th seed. This is where they should want to step up. That should be their motivation. We're in the playoffs somehow, some way. But this is where we need to step up. This is where we need to play our best ball. This is where we need to take the Steeler way, the Steeler mentality, and go out there and live up to what those players previously put out there for us to live up to.
Yeah.
And they're not doing that. They don't have that mindset. They don't have that mentality.
No.
Win or loss, it doesn't matter. Or even how. You know, how they lose, how they win, it doesn't matter. They just go into the locker room and continue the same stuff that they do.
Because it goes back to what Minkah said, where they just wear the black and gold and they think that they're going to get theirs just because of that reason, when that's not the case. You still got to earn it. It's a reflection on talent, and it's much a reflection on coaching, man. It's unfortunate. And I hate that I keep hearing these legends, these former players, past and present, still speak this shit out.
No. Because they're just like us. When they're done playing, they become fans. They become fans. And they want to see these players that are now replacing them, that are taking this team, and they're not living up to the tradition. They're not living up to that culture.
And I find it interesting that Ben, in retirement, is really speaking out on the Steelers' negatives, and he's been 100% with them. Very 100%.
He has been.
On a lot of things he said, but especially on his most recent podcast. And that started with Minkah's comments. Started with Minkah's comments in the locker room after the Thursday night loss versus the Patriots. It's fucked up. It's very depressing, actually, when you really think about it, because, again, man, we understand that those days are gone, and we're never going to get them back. But that's also why we asked for change, because it's necessary. It's very much necessary.
Yeah.
We need a new sense of life, a new sense of desire in that locker room, and I think it's going to start with coaching. It's going to start with coaching. We need modern change. It's been too long. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen because the Steelers and Art the Clown are too much in their ways. Hell, he said in his not most recent, but in the January interview he did on Steelers.com, when he discussed Matt Canada and Mike Tomlin, he said that he trusts Mike Tomlin and he thinks he can give us the best chance to win more championships, which obviously he's delusional. And I hope he still doesn't feel that way. But knowing how he's led this team since his father passed, there's no reason to believe he's changed his mind.
No.
And until that happens, until he changes his mind, there will be no change with this football team. It's unfortunate. And it just doesn't stem from coaching. It absolutely stems from leadership as well.
Yeah.
It absolutely stems from leadership.
And on offense,
That's where it really starts.
and on offense, there just is no leader.
There isn't.
There's no prime leader. There's no big leader. There's no guy that can put that mentality into these players.
No.
When you have a leader on offense that can do that, then maybe we're talking differently, but we don't have that. No. We don't have that whatsoever. Ben even said something, kind of like that. He said maybe the tradition of the Pittsburgh Steelers is done. Maybe it needs to be formed in a new kind of way. Maybe that's the case. But I think the only way that new kind of way happens is when everything gets completely changed.
Yeah, everything.
And that's what needs to happen.
And we wish for that day, and we hope that day comes sooner rather than later. But we're not anticipating that to happen because Tomlin's still under contract one more year, and I doubt they're going to fire him after this season. They're going to stick with him, they're going to stick with Kenny, and we're going to get a repeat next year. Mark my fucking words. You can clip this, you can bookmark it, you can make this as a receipt, whatever the fuck you want. But I've seen this team, I've seen Tomlin lead this team to the same result the last 5-6 fucking years. So I feel right in that assessment. And I'm saying this with 4 games left in the season.